Well, yeah, so we're trying Lao Tzu, number 8. Have you had a chance to read it yet?
Yeah, I was kind of skimming over it right now.
Mm.
She left, so yeah, I'll try to twist and contort my mind, see what we can
Yeah,
come up with.
well, even with your sort of non-Chinese knowing translator, maybe I feel like we could kind of get something out of it with the comparing and contrasting. But anyway, maybe I'll read my version, the more scholarly version.
Hmm.
Highest good is like water, because water excels in benefiting the myriad creatures without contending with them, and settles where none would like to be. It comes close to the way. In a home, it is the site that matters. In quality of mind, it is the depth that matters. In an ally, it is benevolence that matters. In speech, it is good faith that matters. In government, it is order that matters. In affairs, it is ability that matters. In action, it is timeliness that matters. It is because it does not contend that it is never at fault. You know, yeah, I mean, the first thing I notice obviously is a connection with water. I mean, seems like a lot of Asian philosophy, they talk about water in terms of kind of being flexible but powerful. You know, it's, obviously the stuff of life. It seems very soft. It's a metaphor. It can be a metaphor, especially river, like you never step in the same river twice. Um, but it's very soft, but it can carve a deep canyon, over time, and it smooths things. There's a sort of, yeah. And it's interesting that it talks about the highest good is like water, but the water settles, water goes down where none want to be. So none want to be makes it sound like a bad place, but yet water, it's almost like water does what others, the necessary things that others don't want to do, something like that. The myriad creatures is a is a theme of the book, and it seems like they're always, the myriad creatures are sort of more worldly, or differentiated, or always contending, conflict. I don't know, the evolutionary kind of survival of the fittest. Always contending. And it says here that water uh, does not contend with them. It's like it is not involved in the sort of all the political machinations and the power struggles and the violent struggles for survival. And so it comes close to the way that is, seems like the highest good is something like that. And then it lists all these things of like more specific kinds of goods, I guess. Highest good is like water, and then there's specific goods: home, quality of mind, ally, speech, government, affairs, action. And then it goes back to water, or back to highest good, which is like water. It is because it does not contend that it is never at fault. But that does seem a little bit like a solid, or a tautology, like if it does not contend, how could it be at fault? Because if it does not contend, you could say in a way it doesn't participate. And this may be part of the sort of, I don't know, the criticism maybe of like a lot of Eastern philosophy, that it's kind of about non-action to a fault, like not engaging with the world and everything. I mean, I tend to fall not completely on one side or the other, but more on the side of non-action. I tend to think that's like better for you a little bit. But But anyway, yeah, you could criticize, like, of course it is not at fault because it does not try, it does not get anything done. So how could it be blamed for when things go badly? That's kind of one of the central problems, maybe, of governance or of wisdom, is that, anything you do is likely to have unintended consequences. So how do you, in a complex world where other people will make decisions that you can't predict, that may snuff out the good that you are, whatever good you are able to do, if you are able to do it. um, yeah, but I don't know, what do you think?
Mm, yeah, I kind of zoomed in on that last line. But yeah, it kind of made me think about how like in government and uh the society in general, like people are kind of motivated a lot by their self-interest and on their own goals. So then that kind of leads to struggle and conflict arising in all of those things. And um so yeah, I thought about how like if you're like water, you're kind of trying to not be involved in that stuff. So that's what I thought of when it with the not contending. Uh, so yeah, it's very similar to what you thought. Uh, but yeah, I was just kind of thinking about human nature, I guess, in a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah, self-interest or perceived self-interest. I mean, you could argue like deep self-interest does have a lot less of a tendency to make one contentious than
Yeah,
like shallow seeming self-interest. This is part
yeah,
of the thing about, supposedly, about wisdom.
yeah, yeah. So I thought like when you kind of become like that, you kind of become the opposite of water, just like kind of more unbending and kind of
Yeah,
engaged, I guess, in struggle
yeah,
to get what you want.
you do not settle where none would like to be. You
Mm,
more strive for where you and many others like to be. And by
mhm,
definition, often perceived goods are extremely scarce
mm,
because of their status. More people want to go for them.
mhm. Yeah, so I thought that, yeah, in that line, I kind of thought of just kind of ego too. Like maybe you're too good to be at this point in life or in this spot or something, and you need to be wherever, whatever you think is better for you.
What do you mean you're too good to be at this spot right now? Like
I guess where no
you
one likes to
you
be.
think
So
you're
like
you
if you're
think you're
like
too
doing,
good to be at that spot.
yeah,
So you're a little bit like, yeah, eat crap right now and be in the low position and work hard and not worry about trying to be promoted real quickly or anything. Like,
yeah,
eating crap in all sorts of ways builds character and can build you a foundation for later on.
yeah. I think to like at a certain extent, like obviously that could go too far, but yeah, sometimes you kind of need to be at the bottom and kind of learn, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, definitely too quick ascendancy is, a recipe for disaster. You're building up your ego too much. You're not learning deeply enough of basics, and not building, yeah, resiliency from that suffering, that to carry you forward when things are really tough and your
Mhm.
responsibilities are much higher, much greater, excuse me.
Yeah, and I kind of thought of it too, just in general, just not being too preoccupied with status, I guess, or
Yeah.
you know, just being yeah, I guess having that and power or something.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you and I have talked some about power. Yeah, how it's kind of like it's almost like, and I think Plato talks about this, how you kind of want in power the people who don't want to be in power. They have other sort of higher, deeper interests, in philosophy or whatever. And the people that do want power, you don't want them to be in power. You want power to be wielded by those who have knowledge or
Mhm.
those who have wisdom
Mhm.
rather than those who want power. Or at least, you
Mhm.
want them to want to love wisdom and knowledge more and not to love power.
Mhm.
Love of power seems, like love of anything. You be careful of your loves. Love of money is the root of all evil, or love of power is a recipe for folly and unhappiness of that individual and the society. Yeah. But I think love of good things too can be, over love of something, be
Mhm.
careful of your loves. I don't know, love can blind people, like love of their children or something. I don't know. We're hearing a podcast on Marcus Aurelius, and his son Commodus, he inherited the throne from his father, and people wonder why this really wise emperor couldn't have adopted, and that was a common practice for the emperor to adopt a son that would be a good emperor, to get
Mhm.
around the whole thing where if their actual son was, you know, a rich, spoiled brat, which they're likely to be. Um, but yeah, he didn't do that for some reason, and his son was a bad emperor. But you do wonder if, despite all his wisdom, maybe he was a little bit blind because of that, or maybe it's just there was because of circumstances. I don't know. It wasn't possible to go another
Mhm.
route. What do you think is the high? So this presented an analogy of the highest good is like water. Do you think the highest good guides you sometimes?
Mhm.
What is the highest good? I mean, it seems like there are various quotidian, everyday goods, right? Like that help one with competency, with skills, or that are skills. I guess maybe at some point those become indistinguishable. Social skills, skills at one's job. Um, and seems like lower skills can help lead to higher skills. Like I can gain various kinds of knowledge, or the big kinds of knowledge, good knowledge of the good or wisdom, through like earlier skills that I learned, like reading or listening, conversation, asking questions and things. But yeah, what do you think this week did the highest good guide you? Or you can change
Mhm.
that question how you'd like.
Yeah, when I think of highest good, it makes me think of some sort of like a balance or kind of discipline that you kind of incorporate throughout your life. Uh, So if I did, whether I did that this week, I think I kind of did. I think I kind of talked to you a lot about my issues with like food and exercise. So I think I did better this week. Um,
How were you so you were guided by the highest good in doing that stuff, or you're saying, yeah, through goods like discipline?
uh, but yeah, I definitely felt more disciplined and balanced this week. Whether that led me to the highest good, I think, I don't know, I feel maybe it was too minor to tell. Uh, but yeah, I'm kind of thinking of what the highest good even is, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point. I think you kind of go through this dialogue where you're trying to feel out what it is, and then through maybe getting to better examples or ruling out worse examples and coming up with the reasons for those, it starts to clarify the concept. Yeah, all this is sort of partially logic and partially like feeling it out.
Well, you mentioned wisdom, so yeah, I don't know if that is the highest good or just part of the highest good. Uh,
Yeah, is the good one or many? We don't have to worry too much about that. Well, how did you find your balance this week? Or how did you find better balance? Or why did you have worse balance before?
mm, I think when I'm stressed, it's really hard to remain balanced. So become a bit more irrational and kind of weakened, I guess, to my emotions. So
Yeah, it's easier to start self-soothing if you start to become stressed.
yeah,
And then maybe there's a vicious cycle of self-loathing and
yeah, and then there was a
low
little bit of,
mood.
yeah, and there was a little bit of that less that this week since I did what I had to do in regards to my classwork and stuff. So I felt kind of
Not being able
accomplished
to exercise or sleep
or
as
like,
well because of that.
yeah. So I felt more accomplished and secure and thus less stressed. Um, yeah, I think just those kind of feelings kind of led to that feeling of balance. And then it was easier for me to do everything else I had to do to take care of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I used to work at the place you're working at now, at mental health facility, yeah, there's something about structure to a day and a sequence of events and a certain, with that corresponding to your sort of circadian rhythms in some way, and things not piling up or pressuring one, and it being easier to sort of keep a more serene and focused state of mind. I mean, I think so much of like mental health is just focus.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, sometimes your focus zooms in more or is more diffuse, but
Mhm.
still, it should be sort. I don't know. There's like when it becomes too diffuse, or you know, I don't know, you're hectic. That starts to lead to stress and to.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I feel like that's a good point. Like I feel when my attention is being pulled in all these different directions in my daily life, it's really hard to kind of do whatever the highest good is, since I feel like you become more preoccupied with like the base things or and not so much the higher things.
Yeah, I mean, I think religions kind of often teach that. Yeah, I mean, I did just note, in Buddhism, they often, it's not only about sort of meditation and the practices. They often emphasize just more simple, mundane things like mindful eating or silent meals and just all sorts of things in your daily life that aren't the same as sitting, breathing meditation or formal contemplation or
Mhm.
Zen contemplations with your master or something.
Mhm.
But probably those things facilitate sort of more mindfulness
Mhm.
and more of a mind to sort of more spiritual states, or they get things done without your sort of being more drawn into more worldly or sort of distracted subjects and
Mhm.
states. Like if you're having a silent meal, you're likely not having a meal where you might be drawn into like conversation about trivial things or uh, contentious political things or something like
Mhm.
that, where you start to not appreciate your food, and then you kind of get into a little bit of a harried state of mind or something
Mhm.
like that, reactive, or the complaints reverb or sort of negative thoughts reverberate in your mind
Mhm.
afterwards.
Yeah, I think that would be useful, just finding smaller ways to kind of be in that mindset. Uh, since I think when you focus on prayer and meditation, you kind of, yeah, maybe don't realize that you can just do it in smaller ways throughout your day.
Do you pray regularly?
I think I do. It's like before I go to sleep every night, I just uh, pray for everyone I care about to be safe and healthy. Uh, so yeah, I do that before I fall asleep every day, and sometimes in the morning too. Yeah, and then maybe a little bit throughout the day as well, in little moments. Yeah, I find it kind of comforting.
Do you do formal prayers?
Formal. Now that's kind of what I've kind of been lacking on. So kind of the same with the meditation that I've been lagging on too. So like it's the setting time aside for formal prayer and meditation that I haven't been doing so much.
Yeah. In a meditation book that I have, Sharon Salzberg's, I think it's called Real Happiness. She said a friend of hers, when he was still early in his practice, he would like just make sure to never to have a rule to just not set his head on the pillow for the day until he had set for meditation in some way, even for 2 minutes. And that's sort of how people supposedly build habits, is even 1 minute
Mhm.
or 2 minutes, is like just do that, and it's
Yeah.
likely to help build the habit into the next day instead of extinguish it further into the next day if you didn't do it today. And I didn't do it yesterday, so I think I should do it for 20 minutes today to make up for yesterday, and then I
Mhm.
just feel like I don't have the energy for that, so I don't do it at all, and then
Yeah.
tomorrow it's even more likely I'll do what I just did today. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
think that's
actually
a
not.
really powerful thing. When I'm I recently started trying to use mouthwash after flossing my teeth, and then I was doing it for a little while, and then I started forgetting it, and then I would realize after I went to bed that I forgot, and then just try to have some kind of like half-assed note in my head, like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. But then it's kept not working out. And then so I would
Mm-hmm.
start to get myself out of bed and then do it and then go back to sleep. And that's how I start, because of that little bit of inconvenience, that little bit of emotion and action and everything, and change of scenery and everything, it starts to program me. And then, yeah, I did. It was easier to remember after I finished brushing to use the mouthwash.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you probably find that with meditation too. If you just, you forget it again today before you go to bed. Well, if you get out of bed and then just do sitting meditation, even if you're just half asleep, for 1 minute or 2 minutes, or eventually you'll feel a little motivation and you'll do 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and then you'll do the 10 minutes, and then you'll start to feel differently, and it'll start to creep into your identity. I mean, the app just has those 10-minute meditations for a reason. I mean, because they want you to build a habit. And if you did that for 3 months, 3 months of like 2 minutes a day, what would that be? That'd be, a little more than an hour each month. That'd be like 3 hours versus 0. 3 hours versus 0 that's something. That probably makes some kind of difference.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a meditation, but a lot of times when I'm walking back to my car, I notice a tree nearby, and I just kind of focus on the leaf for a little bit.
That
I
sounds
just
like
look at
a
the
meditation
movement.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a meditation to me.
Yeah, but I notice I feel kind of good after doing that.
That's good. And that's also nature too, so
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, just something about the movement of leaves and the wind kind of captivates me.
Yeah, I think with a lot of people, myself too. Yeah, this nature and the wind. It's probably a deep reminder of something fundamental in nature, including our nature. There's something about the spiritual life or experience where people are maybe it's not so much putting something in you, or it's more like you're letting go of like a lot of the more artificial or unhealthy things, unnatural things, and more like reverting back, or getting back to something more fundamental that was there all along, but was just sort of covered up. And it's probably good to kind of remind ourselves of that. And yeah, maybe that's one reason, sort of half inadvertently, but that tree was planted there.
Yeah, I want to know, like, do you sometimes pray?
Not really. Obviously I meditate just about every day and do different meditations, and I try to, kind of like in the app, he has the reminders sometimes at the end of to sort of pause and to try to realize things. But I don't really pray. Sometimes I say things to like a god or something like that. But yeah, I don't really pray. I sometimes do loving kindness meditation, which is a lot like prayer. But I think of that as more like getting in touch with my desire to, for other people to be happy, which changes how I interact with the people that I am directly in contact with. But I don't know if it although I don't know if it actually affects anybody else. So if you're thinking of prayer as a belief that like thoughts or intentions are being transmitted over space time, I mean, I don't pray like that. But yeah, I don't really pray at all. But I recently heard an episode of Lex Friedman's podcast, and it was with Andrew Huberman. He mentioned praying, and he kind of he kind of said not without necessarily a belief in the nature of what you're praying to, or anything like that. Not religious in that way. I'm more open to that. I don't do it much and kind of get lazy about it, but I like memorizing things, including like scripture. And but I use that with other people. But maybe I have this idea of it kind of expanding out of yourself. I mean, I ascribe to the idea that we're not separate beings. And I think the more mentally unhealthy or the spiritually sort of or unhappy you are, the more you believe that you are just within the confines of your own body and you're not connected to nature and others. And so the opposite, I think, of that leads to happiness and leads to beneficence is this expanding out into others and with others, and I guess I would say the way that you act and the way you use words does have a lot to do with that. But yeah, and I think you kind of know, in a way, I don't care what the specific belief is. And I do believe there are pitfalls with believing too firmly, especially in modern times, of believing too firmly in the literal existence of supernatural beings and things. I believe it's more like, there's more to heaven and earth than are contained in your books of philosophy, Horatio. There is a danger in becoming too righteous in one's materialism. But I think there's a danger also in sort of placing too much faith in sort of supernatural beings and things too. Like, I kind of think it's okay and can be good to kind of believe in them, but as long as you have a locus of control sort of within yourself, but so I do think there is some danger with being too much righteously materialist as well. But that's kind of a balance, that's one of my fundamental beliefs, is I believe in balance. Well, anything more?
That's it. Yeah, I listened to that podcast too, or most of it. And finally, I was thinking of you when Andrew Huberman was talking about his relationship with prayer.
Really? Why? Because it's not really dogmatic, but he's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
he
I thought this sounds like something Ben might think.
yeah, I think so. That appeals to me. And yes, sometimes in some Buddhist circles, the sort of ultra abstract way, or that's how it seems to me. Sometimes I am a little more comfortable maybe with slightly more reified, like more Hinduistic, or some Buddhists, like they have gods and things like that, I think. Or even this idea of the self, as a construct, or like as a way of talking, as a way of, you sort of assume that it exists so that you can analyze and understand, and that can lead to greater depth of experience, feeling, knowledge. And the same with God or gods. I do, and not only for the individual but for the group, probably especially for the group, I think is can be very beneficial. But yeah, not being too dogmatic about the actual. That's funny that you related that to me. But yeah, I do believe that God, like, if you ask me, does God or do gods exist? I might say I don't know, but I think they're useful.
Mm.
And not just useful in like a Marxist sort of like opium of the people. This is the way that the ruling classes control the proletariat, but more like useful for, yeah, coming together and deepening experience and not of life and knowledge of highest good, wisdom, middle goods, whatever. A little like literary analysis, where you don't, it's funny because you don't literally think this character is real. It can't be real. It's it's this idea in a book, or this idea that is reified in this actor, and yet you can really get into it to where it really seems really real to you, where rationally I know it's not real, and at the same time it's more real than most people in my life, maybe, or many people in my life. And not only that, but it can be very useful in understanding myself and understanding others and themes in life, and also with coming closer to the experience of reality. Wouldn't want to live without some knowledge of these characters and dramas, and it makes you want to makes you want to live more. Gives you something to live for. Well, anything else? Because it
Mm.
does not contend, it is never at fault. That's an
Yeah, like I,
interesting, like, sort of way to think about interaction, like not contending. Like,
mm,
sort of, I'm reading that book, Verbal Judo, about sort of how to get your way or whatever. I kind of don't like that, but yeah, basically learning, being very skillful in various levels of stress, kind of conflict situations with others, where you stay calm, where your ego doesn't get involved, where you're not trying to dominate others. You're looking for, like, looking out for long-term interests of more than your one person. I'm sorry, but you were going to say something.
no, I was just gonna say maybe it might be interesting to read my translation.
All
If
right,
you
we
if you
haven't gotten
differ.
to that. Do you want to?
Okay. So in this one, it's the supreme good is like water, which nourishes all things without trying to. It is content with the low places that people disdain. Thus it is like the Tao. In dwelling, live close to the ground. In thinking, keep to the simple. In conflict, be fair and generous. In governing, don't try to control. In work, do what you enjoy. In family life, be completely present. When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you.
Yeah, that's definitely much more relatable kind of language, but you can
Hmm.
see a lot of the parallels.
Yeah, I think in here it has 6 instances of in dwelling and thinking and conflict and governing in work and in
Yeah,
family. I think yours might have a few more. Oh, yeah, it's missing like in action or something like that. So it's kind of interesting to me.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, this one is kind of more focused on the individual or something.
well, it seems like, yeah, it's talking to you directly, the
Yeah.
reader, in a way. It's counseling you and something like that.
Hmm.
This one is a little bit more older, kind of more objective sounding kind
Hmm.
of language. Objective is not the right word, but yeah, it's not, it's more distant,
Hmm.
a little more poetic, less self-help sounding or something.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe since it was a Western translator, maybe like it appeals more, I guess,
Well,
to
I
the
think
West.
I might have told you, I believe that the so-called translation you have is like I think he doesn't know Chinese and he just
Mhm.
read many English translations and
Yeah.
he kind of came up with his own sort of
Yeah.
interpretation, you know.
Yeah, self-help. That's like a good way to put it. Feels more like
Yeah,
the self-help version.
yeah. And I don't think that's bad, but you know, it's not always necessarily bad to start off with like an
Mhm.
accessible version, but I do think one wants to kind of one should try to push oneself a little bit past after a certain point and not dwell only in like the sort of more superficial levels of like a particular
Mhm.
subset of knowledge. Yeah, I mean it takes work, and I have a long way to go on that.
As we all do.
Well, you want to maybe continue with another one next week, and maybe we'll start to kind of refine this process. Maybe we'll start to understand more, and I might be nice to try to draw in other people to the conversation, and I don't know, learn how to talk about this stuff, and maybe be more useful for others to listen to too eventually.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll probably get your translation too, so we can both be
Okay.
on track with the
Yeah, I
same
can
book.
tell it to you. It's not the only good translation. This is more of a scholarly one.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I'll send it to you. Okay. Well, until then,
Hmm.
okay. Take care.
You too.